from, where you're tuning in from, and let us know how we can help you guys. We're excited to talk today about marriage. You guys know there's a lot of stuff going on in the world today, talking about a lot with marriage and people growing up in divorced homes and single homes and all this kind of stuff. And so I was just meeting with a guy yesterday talking about just the importance of marriage and marriage coaching, marriage counseling. And Steve and Melisa are passionate about this. They've devoted their life to this. And so I'm really excited for you guys to hear from them, hopefully get some advice, some tips, things like that. And so we want to deconstruct, we want to pull apart ministry and services and give you guys some helpful tips. And so hopefully today, I'm sure we will be able to give you guys some stuff today. But Steve and Melisa are awesome. We've been on staff together. We've been friends. We've helped, students and adults and all kinds of stuff. And so it's been great to know you guys and to serve with you guys, alongside with you guys. Just such a heart for people, such a heart for marriages, just really passionate people. They're really down to earth. You guys you guys are going to enjoy our conversation today. So thank you guys for joining us today. We are going to be talking about, is marriage coaching really that important, right? I think a lot of times we talk about it as being important for other people, but is it really important for us and our marriage? And for us, is it really that valuable? And as pastors, is it that valuable for us to provide it for our staff or even for ourselves? And so we want to talk all about that. But Steve, Melisa, why don't you guys go ahead and take over and introduce yourselves, because you guys do a much better job than I do. So tell us just a little bit about yourselves, a little bit about your ministry, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, we've been married for 16 going on 17 years. Mm-hmm. God really put it on our hearts to do marriage and relation ministry early on, and we officially kicked off Bridge Builder Marriage Ministry
in 2013.
2013.
We did. We felt like God called us to the ministry. A little bit about us. I was married for 20 years before I met Steve. I was the one who left the marriage after 20 years. At the time, we had 3 children. I had 3 children. They were 6, 12, and 16. And I was raised in rural western Oklahoma, so I was living in a little tiny town with about 200 other people. And Stephen and I actually met online way back in the day. And
back when there was dial-ups and chat rooms.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know what dial-ups and chat rooms are these days. But anyway, he was from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and God just divinely orchestrated our connection. He left everything he had, everything he knew, and came to join a pre-assembled family in rural western Oklahoma. And as we walked through that, what we found was that early on, God would begin to talk to us about marriage. We thought it was brilliant at the time. In retrospect, we look back and think, we are the fulfillment of the scripture where it says God uses the weak and foolish things of the world to confound the wise.
I'm not sure whether I'm the weak or the foolish, but I cover one of those bases.
We take turns every other day, I think. But anyway, so we just decided to answer the call of God on our life. In 2013, we founded Bridge Builder Marriage Ministry. And God has taken us not only through ministry school from working in ministry, but also through just our own lives and what the Word has to say about marriage and family. And so we're super passionate about having people experience God's version of marriage and what that looks like. And our family is an example of how it works and why and when it doesn't work.
Yep, and we managed to go through a bunch of trials and tribulations from early on, and it was only serving to fuel our passion to help others have a successful marriage, because marriage is God's idea, and God's ideas are always good.
Sure.
And so many people out there are struggling in their marriage, and they don't see marriage as good. They see marriage as a struggle, and that's just not how God designed it.
Right. So we believe if you do marriage God's way, you have a 100% chance of being successful. God wrote a book about it. The Bible starts with the wedding, it ends with the wedding, and everything in between is groom looking for his bride. And so we just want to present marriage strictly from the gospel perspective with a lot of practical how-tos for people that are both in ministry and just regular congregants or anybody in the world.
Yeah, that's so great. Really love what you guys are doing. So why don't you guys just tell us, obviously a marriage, is important to God. Marriage is super important. And just tell us, in your guys' opinion, what do you guys feel like is like one of some of the biggest challenges that marriages are facing right now? You guys are doing marriage counseling. You guys do marriage conferences. We'll talk more about those later, but just big picture, as you guys are meeting with couples, what do you guys feel like are some of the biggest challenges right now facing marriages right now?
Well, first off, I think what you've got is you've got a culture that is putting exaggerated value on busyness and activity. And couples are filling their lives with so much stuff that they don't have any time to dedicate to one another.
And I think a lot of people, we're inundated with the culture that says, hey, it's easy to live together. Maybe you don't need to be married. Gender is fluid now, so we get to decide what we want to do. And a lot of, we live in a society where a lot of the Bible has been removed from every part of it. So most of the couples that we work with, even couples that come to us through the referral of a pastor or a church and maybe the regular church attenders, they don't really know even then what the Bible has to say. So first of all, we have to start them there. And second of all, most people don't get a lot of marriage help before they get married. Maybe they get 4 or 5, pre-marriage counseling sessions, but it doesn't really help them figure out the problems. It's funny, our son is a pastor, and he came to us one day and he said, I'm pretty sure that most couples fall apart because their finances are a problem. And he's like, that's the biggest issue. And we laughed and we said, that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is men don't know how to talk to women and women don't know how to talk to men. And then you don't know what you don't know. And so a lot of our couples come that way, but society is really, they've devaluated men. We live in a society where the feminist movement has taken over and told women they can be men, which is so silly. That's never how God created it. And so we want to really help people redefine what their role is according to the Word of God.
And it's funny because they come to us with all these troubles, and it's because they didn't ever get any help before. They got all sorts of well wishes, they got presents, they got go get 'em tiger, and they didn't get any practical help on how to be married well.
Yeah. So we just come at it kind of from that way. And the truth is we're inundated through social media, through the internet with the world's view of marriage, the world's view of relationships, the world's view of men and women. And if that's your only basis for knowing how to do marriage, then you're probably not going to be all that successful. And the truth is we run into the same kind of problems with pastors when we counsel with pastors that the regular people have. And pastors, people think, well, pastors should know this stuff. And a lot of them just don't know.
And a lot of them, they are swamped. A lot of them are bivocational. So they're working 2 jobs. They're trying to shepherd a flock, and the sheep that lives in the same pen with them is the one that's getting neglected.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you guys brought up an interesting point, which was social media. So how do you guys feel like, obviously social media is huge. Obviously, it's changing the world. How do you guys feel like it's changing marriages, the impact on marriage? What do you guys, feel like on that?
Well, there's some kind of super crazy statistic that I can't remember off the top of my head, but like 80% of divorces that are filed have the word Facebook somewhere in the reason for divorce. And so again, hey, I connected with my old boyfriend in high school and he looks so much better than the person that I'm married to or whatever.
Yep.
And I think there's just that high connectivity of people through social media that can sometimes cause a lot of problems.
And it's one thing if you're connecting with your cousin in Florida. It's another thing if you're intentionally looking up ex-boyfriends and girlfriends to see what they're doing and whether or not they're single.
Right.
I mean, it connects you to all the sorts of people that you haven't thought about in 15 years.
Right.
So what's the benefit of reconnecting with them now?
The other thing about social media is we all know social media is everybody's highlight reel. Listen, my social media is my highlight reel. I try to be real on it sometimes, but I'm not talking necessarily all the time about the day I'm mad at Steve and what that looks like. So when people look at our marriage through the lens of social media, what they see is the best part of us, or they see this adventurous thing, and then they begin to in comparison is one of the deadly sins of social media, because we begin to compare ourselves. Well, oh gosh, they have a great marriage. Look at them. That magnifies the mess in my own marriage, and so there's that. Social media also is the gateway to pornography and all of those other things that really bring problems into marriage. So while it's good, and we as ministry people should utilize it to our benefit and put out some stuff out there that's going to help people, it's also can be it is a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really tough to balance that, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we use it for good? How do we use it for obviously the benefit? I mean, even like right now, like this video going on social media, right? Like providing some good content, but it has the temptation of opening up other doors that maybe we didn't intend for it to open. And also it's one of those my friend of mine posted a picture of his grass, and it's like, man, look at how green my grass is. But you should also see my water bill and my fertilizer bill.
Right, exactly.
It takes a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of energy to keep this grass green. I think that's also the temptation a lot of times with social media is, like you said, Melisa, man, it looks great, but they didn't see the arguments and the fights but there was a 5-minute window when we looked great and we were having fun and we took our picture and that's what we posted, but everyone didn't see, when you go on a date, maybe the wife's taking forever to get dressed and get ready, get their makeup on, and the man's like yelling, man, let's go, we're late, blah, blah. Then we go on the date and everything's perfect, right? It was like it's all stress getting there, right? And so definitely changing the game for sure. And so with that, I know you guys are involved in marriage ministry, resources, conferences, books, and podcasts, and you guys are in it all day long. So what are a couple pro tips that you guys might be able to give us for keeping a marriage healthy and strong? What are some just kind of insider pro tips that maybe you guys use that you guys talk about in your coaching or your conferences?
This is a super easy question for us to answer. We tell everybody the same thing. The first time we meet them, whether they're a pastor, whether they're just a regular person, whatever.
We taught it to 15 couples last night in a class at Victory. Week 1, lesson 1, every time.
First, a conversation almost with everybody.
Pray the blessing out loud to your spouse so they can hear it every day.
Yeah. It's funny because we invite all of our couples to begin to do that, just to pray the blessing over their spouse together, and then the other spouse prays back. And it's so powerful when you hear your spouse's heart to the Lord for you. And this is not, that prayer, God, could you just fix them? This is just all the ways that I could invite God to be good to you today. And, it doesn't sound like it's a big deal. We're talking about, a minute, 2 minutes tops. But could I just start your day by inviting God to be good to you? And, you hear things from your spouse that they might not tell you otherwise, but they're talking to the Lord on your behalf. And I'm telling you, we had that, and then having, reading one verse of the Bible together with your spouse every day, and just talking about, like, what did you learn from that? What did that speak to you about? Those kinds of things. And it seems so elementary, and it seems so foundational, but the truth is, we talk to pastors every day that don't do that. And but it is hard to stay mad at somebody who's asking God to be good to you today.
And the number one complaint we hear when we present this to people is, well, we don't have time. We're so busy. Well, if we're talking about a 1.5-minute prayer, that's 3 minutes total. You're telling me you don't have 3 minutes to sow into your marriage? You got to be clowning.
Right.
Everybody's got 3 minutes somewhere.
And it's so funny. So we just challenge anybody who's listening to this, put it into practice. Grab your spouse by the hands and say, hey, can I just have like a minute of your time? I just want to pray for you. And the truth is, we bless our food, we bless our children, we bless our churches.
We pray for our car if it's having trouble starting.
Yeah, and we bless everything, but we forget to bless our spouse. And the truth is, we'll say, hey, do you pray for your spouse? And everybody will say, of course we pray for our spouse. Yes, we pray for them.
And then if I ask the other spouse, I say, what has your husband prayed for you recently? Well, I don't know.
Right.
Well, that's why you got to tell them.
Right.
You got to pray over them so they know what you're praying.
And it is, you would be surprised how powerful that one simple thing is in changing marriages.
Yeah, it almost seems too simple, right?
Right.
Oftentimes the scripture tends to be that way. It kind of seems like if you just read it and do it, for some reason it works. So diving in here again, I like to get real practical, and that was, thank you guys. That's super practical, super easy. I love it when it's not, we got to go on this huge thing, or we got to do, it's just real simple. Can you find 2, 3, 4 minutes a day? And I love even the idea of just reading one scripture verse, right? It's not the whole chapter or whatever. Just start somewhere, right? And then hopefully it grows. So talking about resources, I know you guys have resources on your guys' website that you guys have written. You guys have devotionals. You guys have conference materials. You have books, all kinds of stuff. So, but what about some other resources? Talking about yours, obviously, but also maybe some other. I know you guys are certified through some marriage ministries, things like that. So just kind of talk about some resources that maybe are out there for pastors to use, or even just the congregation members in their own marriages.
Well, one of the things that we think is so important is the local church comes in all sizes. And regardless of the size of the church, what we do is we have all of the materials for our conferences ready to go. You provide the building and the people, and we bring everything else. And that's whether you're a church of 50 or whether you're a church of 5,000.
Right. And so we always want to resource churches. One of the things that we have that we've created is a book called Brick by Brick. And we use it with a lot of our pre-marriage, we use it with all of our pre-marriage couples, but we also use it in small group settings. It is a book that we've written that covers 8 important topics in marriage: a God-centered marriage, his needs, her needs, sex, money, conflict resolution, family culture, affair-proofing your marriage. All of those topics are in there, and we've created a workbook that's built into the book. It's very user-friendly, very easy. One of the things we love to resource churches with is we will come and teach your leaders how to teach our book, because we want them to be able to sustain it. If we come and do a conference at your church, that's great, and they're going to walk away with some practical things that they can do tomorrow. But you know what? Not everybody's going to come, and new people are going to show up at your church, and you're going to run into new people that need help with their marriage. And so we want to use that. That's one of the resources that we use. We also have 5 or 6 14-day devotionals that couples can use just to get started with something. They're short, they're easy to read, they're not, deep and theological necessarily. They can be. The Holy Spirit can take you to a lot of places through them, but they're created for both people who don't know anything about the Word and for people who have been in the Word for a long time. And so those are available. We are certified through Jimmy Evans Marriage Today as well. It's one of our certifications. And so we think anything Jimmy Evans has written is worth reading.
He's only been doing marriage for 30 years, so I'm pretty sure he's picked up on some stuff along the way.
He's one of the top premier people. We have a lot of couples who come to us that have trouble with their sex life. And one of our favorite books that we love to recommend for those people who are struggling in the intimacy department in their marriage is a book called Sheet Music by Dr. Kevin Leman. And we utilize that all the time. We don't think you can go wrong with the 5 love languages. That's a book that's been around for decades, but it hasn't lost its ability to teach. So between, the things that you can find on our website versus just the things that are out there in the public realm, there's a lot of help. And let's don't forget the most important book, and that's the Bible. One of the things that we believe is that God created marriage is to be a type and shadow of Christ and the church to the world. And it's one of the most important reasons God created marriage. And so as you want to become a better wife, all you have to do is go through the New Testament, look at how the church engages with Christ.
It's funny because if you go into the back of your Bible and look at your concordance, there is not as many references to husbands and wives as you would think. But if you look at it through the lens that if the husband is Christ and the wife is the church, all of a sudden there's this enormous wealth of biblical wisdom that's going to tell you how to be married well.
Right. And so for husbands, if Jesus did it, you should do it. And if you've received, if the church has received instruction in the word somewhere, then you ought to, as a wife, that should be your role as you interact with your husband. So let's don't forget the best book written on Bible authority, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great resources. I know a couple of ones that Sarah and I have used. His Needs, Her Needs. Those are great. And I know I'm going to say recently, but probably is not even close to recent now, but they've made another one. It's like His Needs, Her Needs with Kids. And so both those are really good. I think too, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of assessments. Definitely the 5 love languages is huge. I think even things like the Enneagram or DISC or any of those where you can better understand each other. When I've dove in and, Sarah, my wife, is a 1 and, I'm a 3. And so those have a lot of complementary things, but they also have a lot of conflict things. And so we can just openly talk about those. And it's no longer like about us as a person, like you, Sarah. It's more about like the personality type. And so
Right.
It's a little bit easier to talk about it and not as confrontational, because it's like, well, you want everything to be perfect. Well, no, like 1s in the Enneagram want things, they find things that are want how to better the world, right? And so it's like, oh, okay, so it's not just like a nitpicking thing about you, like that's an actual personality type. Or the 5 love languages, right? Like, okay, you prefer gifts or acts of service, and so it just kind of helps take it out of being you specifically and like, oh, it's actual personality. There's actually like some rules to follow here, you could say, so let's talk into maybe some of the pastors that are watching right now. Do you guys feel like it's important to provide marriage counseling for their staff? And why is it so important for them to even provide that for their people in their church? And then on the flip side, if they can't provide it themselves, they feel like, man, I'm not qualified, or man, I don't have the time. What are some ways for them to provide that without them having to be the only one doing it?
For sure. I'm going to share a little bit of our story for a second. One of the struggles that we've walked through in our life is, and we're very open about it. Obviously we're going to talk about it on Facebook Live, but Steve struggled with pornography early in our relationship. And it was one of those places where who do you go to talk to about that, right? Anytime we ran into problems, especially when I was on staff at a church, we found this place where you didn't know if it was really safe to share what was going on in your life. And so pastors find themselves in a place where when you can't talk about it, when you can't get help for it, when you can't bring it out into the open, you're only as healthy as your sickest secrets. And, secrets make you sick. And who do you talk to? And this is something that we found traditionally to be true with pastors. No lead pastor is going to go to his associate staff and say, hey, listen, by the way, I'm struggling with porn, or I'm thinking about having an affair, or anything like that. And no associate pastor is going to go tell their pastor that either. And so one of the things, I was on staff, and Steve ran into a problem with that while I was on staff, not necessarily the porn, but just how to have conversations with people outside of that.
Yeah, I was in a box because I didn't want to go to the pastors because I didn't want to complain to Melisa's boss about Melisa. My friends in the church were generally part of my small group, and I didn't want to undermine her leadership in the small group that we led together by talking to them about it. And, we're a strong advocate of not complaining about your spouse to your family because they're already on your side, and you're only going to create a wedge between your family and your spouse. So I was like, where do I go? What do I do? And one of the great things about Bridge Builder is that we're not your church, but we've been in a staff situation, we've been in a congregate situation. So we've been on both sides of that particular issue. Being independent and not connected to any church allows you to have a safe outlet that doesn't put your business out for everybody to see.
Well, and the other thing is, it doesn't jeopardize. It doesn't jeopardize anybody's ministry. And I think that's the biggest fear, is if I come out to somebody about something that's going on in my life in a public way, they're going to either tell me to sit down, they're going to remove me from my ministry, all of those kinds of things. And we are sometimes there are times when situations are bad enough that, hey, listen, God has never asked you to sacrifice your family on the altar of the church. And so there are sometimes when there would be a need for you to step down and take a break and regroup and recycle. And that's true, but it's not always the case. And what we found is that if pastors will step up early instead of waiting till the problem is it is to the place where we're going to say, listen, you're going to have to take a break from ministry just to get yourself in order and to find healing in your own heart and the heart of your spouse. If pastors had a place where they could talk about regular things and struggles and stuff like that in a safe environment where they knew it was confidential, where they knew that they were going to be able to say whatever they wanted to say in a judgment-free environment and find help, then we wouldn't be having pastors who need to step down from their ministry. Our son is a pastor. We said that a little bit earlier, and he's a very pro-marriage counseling person. Marriage counseling saved his marriage, and for a long period of time, he required that his staff went to marriage counseling at least once a month, and the church paid for half of their sessions. And they had to pay, the pastor had to pay for half of it, but he paid for half of it too. And so it is, being in ministry looks glamorous, but it's stressful, and it puts the stress on every member of your family. And you're the biggest target. The devil wants to take you out. He wants to silence you. And so he's going to constantly, be shooting those arrows at you that could lead you to that place. And so we tell pastors that we work with, listen, we'll meet in the middle of a forest. Nobody will know you met with us unless you tell them. We prefer to avoid the forest, but if that's the last resort, yeah, we'll meet you in the forest.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is so essential and so underlooked is if you have a regular counseling appointment, what it does is it keeps the stress and the issues from building up till they get to a breaking point. If you have something set up for sort of regular maintenance, then the little issues stay little and they don't turn into giant issues that create a crisis that you can't get out from under.
And the other thing that I think is that, like, we had a couple that we worked with not too long ago, and we'd actually done a conference in their church, and they said, hey, we think we're gonna, maybe see you once a quarter, kind of as a routine thing. And we're like, great, that'd be terrific. So we went and met with them the first time, and they're like, yeah, we think we'll see you again next week. And because they were able to bring up some problems that they didn't even recognize that they had, that they just needed a safe place to talk through. And so we walked them through kind of that situation in their life. We stay connected to them on a regular basis, even now. And we see them as they need, just kind of as a routine maintenance checkup thing now. But it's been really helpful for them. And one of the things that we love to offer churches is like, we'll come spend the day at your staff. All of your staff can see us, and with their spouses or whatever. And it's just a routine maintenance thing. It's just like anything else you do. It's leadership training. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And I mean, it's kind of like getting the oil change in your car,
Exactly.
right? Before the engine blows up, right? You just kind of do it. You got the sticker saying, coming up, and for me, I don't even think about my oil, but every once in a while I look at the sticker, right? And I say, okay, well, I'm 1,000 miles away, so I got to start thinking about it a little bit, or, oh shoot, man, like, I'm a little bit over. And so I think having, like you guys talking about, like that routine, oh man, like every quarter we're supposed to go, or every month, whatever it is. It's like, oh man, we missed it. So let's go and get it before it becomes the engine's on fire and all that kind of stuff. And so just that routine maintenance is so good, so important. And so I think too, just going to marriage conferences is important, and being part of that, and having it being a part of your conversation with friends. And so, what do you guys say? I'm sure you guys experience this a lot, where people haven't gotten the oil change, you could say. They haven't been working on it, and they feel like there's no hope for our marriage. This is over. I'm sure you guys encounter that a lot, where by the time they come to you, they've got the papers on the table. Maybe they've even signed it. They just haven't mailed it yet, right? And so what would you say to that couple that says, there's no hope for our marriage, there's no hope for us?
We've run into that exact situation on a number of occasions, where they've been, the husband's living in a different house, in a different state, and they decide to throw one last Hail Mary to try to save their marriage. And oddly enough, if you take the biblical prescription to what ails your marriage, you're gonna have success. And this one particular couple that we saw very early on in our ministry, we got them back on the right track, and they were on the jagged edge.
Yeah,
and
they were the worst.
Yeah, we got them back on track. We got everything going. They came to us probably 2 years later with some struggles. We reminded them of doing what works. They got the same results they got the first time, and eventually they started sending their kids to us.
Yeah. So we've seen so many members of their family and friends just because of that. But here's the thing, it's not over. And even in situations, I mean, we've worked in situations where there's been infidelity or pornography or trust violation of some variety. And again, it goes back to, if you apply biblical principles to your marriage, every situation is able to be saved. Now, again, abuse is a different situation, and that's a whole nother gamut that we don't have time to go into. But as far as just routine, like, I don't like you anymore, you make me mad, we have nothing in common, the church gets the best of you and I don't get any of you, those kinds of situations, usually it's not nearly as bad as people think it is when you actually have a chance to sit down and talk to each other. And if you have a place, most of the time it comes because they don't talk about the problems, and they don't talk about the issues, and they don't fix anything until they're fighting World War III. And it's like, oh my gosh, we should get some help. I will say this, and it's bragging totally 100%, and I'll just call it what it is. But the truth is, 87% of the couples that we work with stay together and do marriage fairly well. Not all of them live happily. I wouldn't say all of them are living the dream happily ever after, but they are still in it, and their kids are not suffering at the hands of those divorce papers.
And one of the points that Melisa just made is they don't talk about it, and it's because, every time we talk about it, we get into a fight. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why you come to our office. You have a safe environment where you can bring up your issues, where there's a third party to play referee, if you will, to call a foul when there's a foul, and to reaffirm valid points that both sides of the argument makes. And if you've got that place where you can hash out your issues don't wind up, eating your marriage alive.
Right. The other thing that Stephen and I do that a lot of places don't do is every one of our couples are going to work with Stephen and I together at the same time. So we do 2-on-2 counseling. So every husband has a partner, every wife has a partner. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be the wife's partner and Steve's going to be the husband's partner. Sometimes those lines cross a little bit.
More often than you'd think.
But it's interesting that that having that dynamic of dual counseling at the same time really does level the playing field. And, we can call fouls when they're there on, I can call a wife out when she's being disrespectful, and Steve can, talk to her husband when he's not being, not being kind and loving to his wife or whatever. And so that helps a lot. And it's something that we offer that a lot of places aren't going to provide for you.
Yeah, I love that. So, kind of wrapping up here, who is somebody, or I know you already mentioned Jimmy Evans, but are there some other people that have had a really big impact on your marriage, on your ministry? Who are some people that are out there just really, really spoken into through, either personal contact or just their resources really impacted you guys?
Well, one of the first places that we went to when we got serious about doing marriage was we had Dr. John Chastain take us through his life coaching class, and that really redirected the ship as far as it goes, because we really approach it from a bunch of different angles. We're not looking to be professional listeners. We're counselors, we're coaches, we're mentors, we're teachers, and John really brought that multi-pronged approach to us early on before we even started seeing clients.
Right. There's a lot of great marriage ministries out there. Dr. Kevin Lehman has done a lot of great stuff in the realm of marriage. Gary Smalley's done a ton of great stuff in the area of marriage. Townsend and Cloud have done a lot of great work. So there's a lot of great marriage people out there. Our thing is, if you're reading something about marriage from a Christian biblical perspective, it's going to help you. So we don't even, we limit. There's a lot of marriage ministries, even in Oklahoma, that are doing really good things. And so utilize whatever is available to you, whether it's online, whether it is in a book, whether it is face-to-face counseling. There's just a ton of really great marriage stuff out there.
Yeah, a neglected resource stops being a resource.
Right.
Yeah. So I love that. There's so many great resources available today, even podcasts, things like that. And so let me finish up with this one. What is something that brings renewal to you guys?
Brings renewal to us. We're in the ministry like a lot of people are. We really do try to value our marriage above everything else. And so it's times away. It is important. If your church can't function without you and your wife there, and they miss you once a quarter, that there's a whole lot of other issues going along with that. But just the idea of saying, you know what, we're going to have a date night. We're going to have a weekend away at least once a quarter. We're going to get away for at least a week every year, where it's just the two of us. Not taking we're empty nesters now, but we don't take the kids with us. It's just the two of us. And that really does make a difference. People forget to spend time together. Keeping our priorities in the right order. It is God, it is your spouse, it is your family, it is the church. And when you keep those priorities in order and say, listen, you know what, my wife is going to have access to me. I'm going to answer her phone calls. I'm going to respond to her text messages. My kids are going to be able to have access to me, and I'm not going to never show up at a ball game. And so it's keeping your priorities straight that I think keeps you refreshed. Staying in the Word, praying the blessing, those kinds of things. Serving together is a way that refreshes us. And so just really don't forget the simple benefit of spending one-on-one, face-to-face quality time with your spouse.
And one of the things that particularly seems to befall couples that are in ministry, because their weekends are often spoken for with work, is that they neglect Sabbath. Mm-hmm. and they wind up going every day, all day, doing something, whether it's outreach or services or kids events, and they wind up literally never Sabbathing. It's on the stone tablet, for goodness sakes. It's a top tenner, and it gets ignored by a lot of couples that we see.
And I do think that that's a super important thing, and we really do try to guard that in our lives, and say, listen, no, on this day, we don't see clients at all on Sundays. We don't. We go to church, we rest, we recuperate, unless we're speaking somewhere. But we really do guard the Sabbath, and I think that's one of the most refreshing things we do, because that opens up our lives to God's blessing when we follow His plan. God knew we needed self-care. That's why He created the Sabbath. Like, we need to take care of ourselves, and pastors need to work that into their life. They don't need to answer a staff email one day a week. Your staff can live without you, and that's an important thing. And your staff should be taking that day too.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one, right? To think that we can survive without answering for one day, right? Well, hey, Steve and Melisa, thank you guys so much for your time. It's been super helpful. Hopefully this has been helpful for you guys as well. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, hit the bell, and we will keep you updated as we continue to record and get more content to you guys. So thank you guys so much for being here. Hopefully we can stay in contact. And again, let us know where you're watching, where you're tuning in from. So, Steve, Melisa, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, website?
bridgebuildermm.org. They can get to us from there. And so we want to hear from you. You can follow us on all social media at Bridge Builder Marriage. One of the things we want to make bringing marriage conferences into churches super easy. And so we're going to provide churches with absolutely everything they need to do a conference, from graphics and announcement videos and all that kind of stuff. We're going to provide you with that stuff so you can just bring us in. Don't neglect the marriage ministry in your church.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll have all the links to that in the comments for their website, resources, all that kind of stuff. So, Steve and Melisa, Bridge Builders, thank you guys so much for your time. Look forward to staying connected with everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan.